I'm Joan Schindelar, and for 20-some years I've been a kitchen volunteer for IPNC, working in the kitchen, doing whatever needs to be done.
And I'm Joan Schindelar, and I've worked with the International Pinot Noir celebration for, this is, trying to go back and figure this out, I think 22 years. And I'm a kitchen volunteer, and I got involved with this. I had a friend of mine call me one day and said, you know, the International Pinot Noir celebration is looking for some help, and would you be interested in helping? He'd already done it a year before, and I said, sure, that sounds good. I'd give it a shot. So that's how I got involved.
So when you say, what is the range of things? Can you describe when you say you help in the kitchen? What is, and you do all kinds of things? What are the types of things that the two of you have done in the kitchen? What's the range of jobs?
The range of jobs started out, and it still is, helping the chefs prepare the massive amounts of food that is served to the guests every meal. And they require a lot of kitchen prep work. I mean, crates of onions need to be sliced or diced or chopped. Things need to be sautéed. Herbs need to be washed. Berries need to be cleaned and perfect. Anything that they need prepped for food service, we help with. We've learned to chop and slice amazing things. It's been a wonderful education for us. We both have liked to cook anyway, but we've never gone to culinary school, and the chefs seem to know that and appreciate us anyway, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, I think all of the things that Joan said are the things that I do also, but I think one of the really neat things that over the years that has happened is that we've been there long enough that now the chefs can come and say, listen, you know, we need a vegetarian dish with these mushrooms in them, and so they trust us to come up with something ourselves, so they don't have to stand over and watch us do the work. We can, for example, do a mushroom dish, and I can saute onions and garlic and put the mushrooms in and add a little soy sauce, add some sugar, add some salt, and come up with a really nice tasty dish that can go on top of crostinis or things like that for the vegetarians. So the trust level has become higher with the amount of experience that we've had. They can just turn things over, or if they say, for example, we need to have the stock, they know that if they give us all the veggies and all the things they want in that stock, then that we can get the job done. They don't have to look over our shoulders all the time to make sure we're doing the correct thing.
So are you working with the same chefs every year? How does this trust get established, or do you have to break new chefs in once in a while?
We don't break in anybody, they break us in. No, they show us, you know, there are different chefs every year who are featured for IPNC. Some chefs come back year after year, and we're always so happy to see them return. And we've developed personal relationships with many of the chefs that we enjoy. And but it's always fun to meet new chefs and then look forward to eating sometimes in their restaurants. And that's something we look forward to doing.
So you've actually gone to some of their restaurants where you've from the chefs that have been here before.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
Yes.
And in fact, we've worked at the Heathman with Philippe Boulot, and we actually went to his restaurant and did some prep work there. And that was really a lot of fun because he was very generous with taking good care of us and making sure that we had some great food to eat for lunch, for example, and brought out bottles of wine. And so it was a great experience. We enjoyed that, and it was a lot of fun. And he's a great person to work for. So he knows us and we know him. And so there are some of these people that over the years, as Joan was saying, you do get to know them fairly well because several come back often. Pascal Sultan, for example, comes back year after year, although he hasn't been here for a couple of years. But so we've been at his restaurant, and we've been at Wildwood with Corey Schreiber, who is actually not at Wildwood anymore right
No,
now.
Dustin
So,
Clark is.
so we've gotten to know them really, really well, and it's been a lot of fun. So they come in and they greet us and know that we've been there, and so it's a lot of fun. It's just a lawnmower.
It's almost inevitable that we have, the
Where's
folks
the
decide to
train?
mow right here.
Where's the train?
So why don't you take us a little bit through from the very beginning? You know, when do you arrive at IPNC, and then sort of what goes on? You've talked about kind of different things, but what would a day be like behind the scenes in the kitchen? So when do you first arrive, and then move us through that a bit?
Technically, on Thursday before IPNC opens on a Friday, the kitchen is running full steam, full of people, full of chefs, full of workers, getting things prepped for Friday. John and I actually start volunteering earlier in the week for Ann Nisbet, the culinary director. She needs all the Penske rental trucks, for example, brought from Tualatin to the campus so they can be used to transport all kinds of needs. And so we run up and get the Penske trucks. We will pick up, for example, pallets of tea from Stephen Smith Teas on a day in Portland. We'll make Portland run to get supplies for the kitchen. But Thursday is when the kitchen is running full steam. The chefs have their food delivered to the coolers, and we all get together and start cooking.
So then, why don't you take us through a day at just, you get there Thursday, then how early are you there in the morning to get started?
8 o'clock in the morning with our knives. We are, everyone who works in the kitchen is asked to bring a set of knives and wear shoes that are closed-toed, so that if things drop, they're not going to cut your toes off. We've learned this, and we've learned how a restaurant kitchen works, which was a totally new experience for a volunteer. Learning how the volumes of food all fit into a cohesive plating at the end is amazing. It's just quite a spectacle.
So our day starts actually, usually we get there around 8 o'clock, maybe a little bit before. And for example, Friday is the longest day of all, because that goes through grand dinner, which is almost 11 o'clock at night. So we start at 8 o'clock in the morning and work till almost 11 o'clock at night. And then at that time, then usually we've had Kame cater food for all the people who helped out at the grand dinner. So that's a really long day. But Joan's correct. When our involvement starts when we go to pick up the trucks and pick up things in Portland. Plus the other thing that I've done, Joan hasn't done, but is that we have to deliver charcoal and water and things like that to all the wineries that are having days in the vineyard.
The lunch.
And we can the lunches in the vineyard, and so that's a different topic. But I mean, so all that stuff has to be done before. And then Wednesday, sometimes some chefs are there preparing things. So sometimes even on a Wednesday, we may go in the afternoon and just help out if anything needs to get done.
There's a person always in charge of the kitchen, a kitchen director, if you will. I forget the name of his title. But we report in at 8 o'clock. We say which chef needs help and what needs to be done, and we get assigned a station, and we start working. And then there are breaks, and we go home for lunch, and
or eat there.
Or eat there. Actually, they give us food. The kitchen staff all gets food. And then when it's time for a service, the chefs call it showtime. When it's time to serve or plate the food that goes to the guests, it's a big deal. We make sure that our jackets are on. We are assigned a place in line. The plate comes down. If your job is to put 3 little beets at 2 o'clock on that plate, that's what you do, and the plate goes down and gets all decorated perfectly to go out to the guests. And chefs love that showtime when it's service time. They love it, and so it's an enthusiastic group.
I think one of the things that we've noticed over the years, though, is that there have been some changes in the kitchen as far as the volunteers' work goes, and that is that we've noticed that several of the chefs, maybe not a majority, but several of the chefs are doing a lot more prep work at their own restaurant. It's easier for them to be able to do that. So anyway, we have noticed that there are a lot of times when we have a little bit of downtime in the kitchen now, because some of the chefs, they come with big coolers full of things that are already prepped, ready to go. And quite honestly, it's probably easier for them to do it at their own restaurant, and plus they have their professional staff. But so that's one change that we've noticed in preparation in the kitchen.
And in light of that, the atmosphere in the kitchen the last few years has been calmer. When we first started, oh my goodness, it was panic, Chefs would say, I've got to have this done, I've got to have this done, chop faster, and everyone would be joining everybody else in this frantic pace to get the service out on time. Now it's an easier pace, the direction is clearer from our vantage point, and everyone is much more organized.
So what keeps you coming back? You said you've done it at least 22 years, and you about the same?
About the same.
So what keeps you coming back to IPNC and doing this every year?
I think the thing, it's almost like a fraternity. We see a lot of the same people over and over. We look forward to seeing them every year. Great people, people from the culinary schools who bring some of their students up here to help with IPNC, and it's just a camaraderie. It's a lot of fun. And even though Joan and I do a lot of cooking, every year there's room you find out some new technique, some new thing going on. And so it's always fun. And then part of our entertainment at home and things is when we have folks come over for dinner and things, we incorporate some of the things that we've learned at IPNC, some new things. And so for me, that's it's like a fraternity, getting together.
Is that the same for you? Or?
Yes. Yeah. When we started all those 20-some years ago, I was still working an office job, and so I would run down at 5 o'clock on Thursday to help for a little while, and run down at 5 o'clock on Friday, and then stay through dinner. And I remember it was so exhausting. Now we're retired, so we're able to devote all the time every day, but we still get tired because we're older. We're older now, and we do get tired. But hey, good shoes are the key. Good shoes are the key.
And good equipment is really important too. I mean, I talk to people who tell me, I don't really like to cook, but part of the reason they don't like to cook is they have crummy pans, they have crummy knives. You've got to have the right stuff to get the job done. And so we have expensive pans and we have expensive knives.
Right.
So you mentioned one of the techniques that you took. Can you just give me one that you maybe took from there and you've entertained your friends with?
I don't know if I can think of anything specific right at the moment. A lot of times it has more to do with the foods and the combinations of foods rather than a particular new technique on doing something.
A cantaloupe. I learned to do a cantaloupe in a totally different way than I'd ever done peeled to get the skin off the rind off the cantaloupe. And chef says, well, you do it like this. And I said, oh, okay, and I can do it like that. It's so much easier than the way I did it at home. And then I think the worst experience was one year we had mangoes, a whole crate of mangoes. Maybe there were more than.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yes. And so chef said, okay, peel the mango and then you slice. It has a huge pit, so you have to slice a third off and a third off, and then there were little tiny slices that I had to do. So I started that, and these mangoes were terrible to peel. And I was getting, my hand was sore, I was getting blood, I had to be careful and get gloves, and people would come over and help me. I was in a corner. They would come over and they would help and keep me company, and pretty soon they would give up. And I would be alone again with these mangoes. It was a nightmare to do these mangoes. I thought I'd never finish the crate, but we did it. But I never wanted to peel another mango for years after that.
So what have you taken away as a result of your participation with IPNC? How has this impacted you personally?
I think that it certainly has helped with an appreciation of the food and the wine pairings. I've really enjoyed that. It's been fun to watch the successes at IPNC. Not all PNCs have been successes, but generally they are. I mean, 99% of the time they have been. So I think that's really enjoyable, and being able to taste wines from all over the country, all over the world for that matter, Pinots from everywhere. That has been just great. But the pairings and things have just been really, really fun.
And I've enjoyed the whole, I've appreciated the whole food service scene much more now. You know, I'm able to go to a restaurant and appreciate the effort that has gone into my meal. Rather than just enjoy the taste, I know what effort went in. And the wines too. We really appreciate the wines. So.
And I think and Joan's correct in that, we realize how brutal the restaurant business is. When people have often said, well, why haven't you and Joan ever opened up a restaurant? I would never do that. And so we have a great appreciation for people like Jack Zarnecki, who does the Joel Palmer House, and Jason Stoller-Smith, who was at Dundee Bistro, now up at Timberline, etc. We know what it takes to be successful, and how much work it is, and how many hours you are on your feet. So that is a real appreciation. Lots of people really don't get that part of the restaurant business.
Never mind the business aspect of price points and, you know, supplies and sources, and it's mind-boggling.
So how do you see the IPNC as being a unique wine event in Oregon and in the world, really?
Well, I think that we have watched the IPNC evolve from, I think when it first started, it was an appreciation of Pinot, but it was also kind of a community event. I mean, lots of people from the community came, even though at the beginning it was still fairly expensive. I don't remember maybe $150 to $200 a person. It was pretty expensive, but we had lots of people in the community come to that. Now it's changed, and it's a lot more expensive, but it's been there for a long time, but it's a lot more expensive. And so we see more owners of companies, more wine people rather than community people. That's one thing that I've noticed.
But I think that was the aim all along. It is an international Pinot Noir celebration, and that's been the thrust, I believe, to bring international focus to this region. And I think it's doing a beautiful job. There aren't many international Pinot Noir celebrations. I've checked online. There are some that are quite well thought of, but we like to think this is unique, and we're happy to support it.
So you kind of mentioned the mango story. Can each of you share, do you have some kind of real memorable IPNC story? We had Rob Cowell talked one time about having to drive the wine truck and forgetting that he had a guy in the back, and these cases of wine came down on him, and there are kind of these stories, these behind the scenes stories. Do you have like a memorable story from the kitchen that each of you could tell? Well,
would you like to hear one that maybe wasn't that great?
Sure.
Okay, well, I think one of the IPNCs that was, I would say, probably not as successful as it could have been was the year that we had a Japanese chef here. He was a great guy. He brought his whole family here, and we worked and worked and worked. I mean, the prep work for this chef was unbelievable. We used more plates at that IPNC dinner than the grand dinner than any other that we've ever done. But for some reason, the pairing and the lack of spices, whatever, just didn't work out really well. And that's kind of one that sticks in my mind as probably one of the least successful. I thought the food was good, and it was not successful because we put a lot of effort into it. I mean, it was probably one of the hardest years that we'd ever had. And plating was a nightmare. But I don't know. It just didn't work out that well. So that's kind of memorable for me.
Yeah.
I have lots of great stories too, others, but.
What was the one with Roy Yamaguchi from Hawaii?
Well, he just came late.
He came, but that was panic. But he had sea foam or whatever it was. And the ingredients that you learn to work with are sometimes really unusual. You've never seen them before, and you're asked to, okay, this is what this is, and this is how I want it done, and okay, fine. So we do this, and I've never even seen anything like it since. But it was fun. I have no idea how he ever thought of such an ingredient, but it made a striking presentation on a plate. Striking.
He has restaurants all over the world,
yeah.
And he's quite well known, and his restaurants are Roy's Place, and they're really good. In fact, for the ingredient that Joan is talking about, we had to go pick it up at the airport. He had a chip from Japan, and he had
from
boxes of this.
Hawaii.
Okay, boxes, yeah, boxes of this stuff. Boxes of this stuff.
Yes.
And he ended up using just a small portion, so we had a lot of leftovers. But
then there was not too long ago the chef from New Zealand. Wonderful man came, and his entree was going to be salmon, and everybody said, "Why are you going to serve New Zealand salmon in Oregon?" And he says, just wait. And it truly was a wonderful, wonderful preparation of his salmon. Everybody loved it. So we enjoyed that. And there was another chef who had the lamb. Oh my gosh, it was wonderful. Lamb. I've never seen a lamb T-bone that was huge, very, very thick and small, but a T-bone. And they were just delicious. I got one to eat, and I had one bite taken out, and then we had to run do something. I came back, it was gone. I only had one bite of it.
yeah, they were lamb T-bone chops that came from Colorado. And we had a party, a dinner party one time at a friend's house, and who also works at IPNC. And he found out where those came from, and he ordered those lamb chops and had them delivered to his house, and that's what we grilled that night. Those very same kind. That was truly one of the most magnificent dinners that we've done at IPNC. Mm-hmm. They were just wonderful. Very thick. They were probably 2 inches thick.
Yes.
Very good.
I didn't have breakfast. You realize that?
Oh.
Yeah.
I know.
So we're pretty well done, but could you just tell me what did you two do before you retired? What did you retire from?
I taught school. I'm a retired school teacher. Joan and I met in Japan. I worked for the Department of Defense, and taught school outside of Tokyo, and since then we lived in Germany, and we lived in Spain. So that's kind of where we got interested in all this these international foods, and all this these different kinds of wines from all the different countries, and And then we decided to move back to America. And so we looked and looked and looked, and I didn't want to live in Ohio anymore. I did not like winters, and I did not like hot, humid summers, and Joan's from Oregon. So we decided to move to Oregon, and then we had to find the place. And so we thought that McMinnville was, just a little ways from the state capital, a little ways away from Portland, a little ways from Mount Hood, and a little ways away from the ocean. So we came here, and so I taught here 25 years.
At where?
I was at Cook Elementary School before it closed, but for my last 5 years of my teaching career, I was at Memorial Elementary School.
And where did you work?
Well, I started my career teaching too, taught high school. We taught overseas in American schools for the military. But when we moved here, we had 2 small children by that time, and I got a job, I actually worked at Linfield for a couple of years. But I spent 20-some years with the court system. I was a judicial assistant and then a court operations supervisor. So I did that till I retired. It was a fascinating job. I loved it.
Right, I think that's about it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.